Angel Knot.
This is, I believe, about physical versus digital. I think. I can't remember. I haven't seen it yet though. But all right, let's go ahead and check this out. This is Topher A.
Or digital. You know, there's actually a really good argument to be had. Physical or digital. You know, there's actually a really good argument to be had on both sides here. And because of some recent events that have happened with my family, I've found myself thinking about this discussion
What y'all say? Physical, digital? Let me know in the comments. I want to say a little bit of both.
quite a bit. Now, whether you grew up in the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s, where your only option was cartridge,
Hey, his tattoos is hard. That dude got a Game Boy tattooed? Oh, heck yeah.
disc, or don't play, or you grew up with more modern consoles and you just load
That's how you know you about that life, when you got a Game Boy tattoo. I'm not about that life, I guess.
your hard drive to the max with every game you want to play. This is definitely a discussion you're going to want to participate in, because today I'm going to take a look at both of them, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, because I think you'll actually be pretty shocked at some of the arguments I've had with myself over digital media and digital media rights. Even
That's how games and like hobbies will get you. They'll get you arguing with yourself.
though I grew up with and still collect physical media. So today, we're gonna have that hard conversation. And we're gonna find out just what side of the line do you lie on? Or maybe you're like me and you like to blur the lines. So I am a child of the 80s, through and through. That means when I was growing up, there was no choice. When you wanted to play a game, you had to buy the cartridge, whether it was NES, Super NES, Sega Genesis, N64, or one of the handhelds. You had to go to the store and you had to buy a game. And over years of playing and collecting, I have amassed a lot of physical media. Now, whether we're talking
Let me ask y'all a question, right? And this is not judging this dude, but when do we get to the point with collecting where it's not collecting, but it's just hoarding, right? Is that a thing, or is it just always collecting because it's games? Is there a such thing as digital hoarding, right? I don't know. Let me know.
cartridges or game discs themselves. There is something very tangible, very physical, and very permanent about having physical media. You know, when you buy a piece of physical media, whether it be a cartridge or a disc, you own it. You can touch it. And being able to hold this kind of stuff is what gives you that sense of ownership. Back then, when a company decided to ship a game, it had to be complete, because this was permanent. There was no day one updates. There was no patches. There was no DLC. Now, a lot of you may not know this, but there were versions of games. In some cases, the first version of the game can be very different than a second, third, or fourth version, but most of the time you didn't even know you were buying a different version because they really didn't want to be public about it. This was permanent, which also means sometimes the game just sucked. And this here is the argument that you see made most today. A lot of people will say games ship in a broken state. Back
That's
in the
true.
day, games couldn't ship in a broken state. But when I was growing up, a lot of games shipped in a broken state. We just called them bad games. Nowadays, you can do a day one patch or even over time. That's something
I keep trying to get my cat off my lap because it keeps trying to get the wires on my in-ears, and I don't want to keep fighting with this cat, so I keep like trying to get her off of me, and she keeps jumping back.
we'll talk
But that's the struggle I got going on over here.
about when we get to the digital media part. And a lot of that stuff sounds really nice, right? And that's why a lot of us loved our physical media growing up. But let's talk about the downsides to physical media. First and foremost, as you can see when we walk around my game rooms, yes, plural,
Dang,
takes
plural.
up a lot of space. All of this stuff here is not small by any means. So if you really want a store kiosk Virtual Boy, you have to have the space for it, which is why back in the day it was so enticing for us to trade all of our games in. Boy, is that something that you're regretting now, isn't it? And especially growing up when you're a kid, not
Any of you all have any rare games that you traded in to get a game that you thought was a better game, and then you're like, "Dag, I should have kept that because now it's worth $400 on eBay"? Anybody?
everybody has the space for stuff like this. I certainly didn't, and I will tell
Oh,
you,
that's hard. That dude
it
got
was
a
a caveat
Garbage Pail Kids neon sign. Yo, that's sick.
when my wife and I decided to buy a house. There had to be a room that would house all of this stuff, which she was super thrilled about. Now, the other con to
Bet.
physical media is actually multifaceted, and that is it's physical. So for a company to produce this stuff, there is a cost. Outside of development cost, there's the cost of the goods, there's the cost of the plastic, and there is also a environmental cost to this, because while I collected all of this sort of stuff, not everybody did. And so for a lot of folks, when they moved away from their parents' house, off to college, off to the military, wherever they were going, a lot of this stuff got thrown away, and the plastics end up God knows where. But I would definitely say the biggest benefit to physical media is ownership. When you buy a physical copy of a game, you know that, unless your console breaks or something unfortunately happens to the cartridge or the disc,
You have the game.
you will be able to play that game forever in perpetuity. Your kids will be able to play it if you're a person like me and you save all of your crap. And if there's anything that we have learned as a society, it is that people love to own their stuff. I know I do. Now, let's talk about an interesting trend that started right around the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 era. Game devs started giving us the option or the ability to download the games directly to our consoles, our hard drives in our consoles. And this sort of started with little bite-sized games.
This dude's
You remember
setup is
Xbox
amazing.
Live Arcade and stuff like that. It really wasn't until the end of that era when we really started to see storefronts on the Xbox and the PlayStation, where we could actually buy the games physically on the day of release and download them. Now, I don't care how you say you feel about it today. At the time, everyone thought that was incredibly cool and convenient. Because before that, if I wanted to buy a copy of WCW NWO Revenge, I would have to go to the store.
But something that we didn't think about is, okay, how am I going to take this game over to my friend's house, right? Because when you got a 64 or a PlayStation, you're just taking the disc or taking the cartridge.
And better yet, I would have to go to the store if I wanted it on time and wait in line. And in some cases, you go to the store at midnight because you were hardcore like me and you wanted to play it the second it was released. Well, when this started happening, boy, wasn't it cool. We didn't even need to go to the store. And if you lived on this side of the country, you didn't even have to wait till midnight most of the time. You had to wait until like 9 o'clock. And then the storefront would update and you could download God of War or Halo 4 or whatever game it was.
It's just something that's not magical about downloading something versus walking into a physical store. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I know the convenience, but if you grew up with like a Funko Land, oh man, those were the days. Like, I mean, you still got GameStops, but GameStop ain't a vibe like Funko Land. That's for real, for real.
You were overly anticipating playing, and you can start playing it, well, I don't want to say right away, but you had some download time, and then you can start playing it. That was when the avalanche happened, and pretty much everything went day and date digital. Because before then, it was a handful of games. Most of the time, it was just first-party games. So the Xbox developed games and the PlayStation developed games you could download. But a lot of the other stuff, you still had to go to the store and buy it physically. By the time the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 rolled around, those stores were packed. Everything that you would want was available on those stores. And I'll admit, even I, at that point, was like, but why go to the store? And then they started the pre-download thing, where I could buy it ahead of time, pre-download it, and then at 9 p.m. on Monday night, because Tuesdays was always release day, I could start playing it. That was awesome. And I really, thinking back to it now, I really only did that as a necessity of being a hardcore gamer. I wanted to get in the game and get in the action as fast as possible. And that was the quickest way for me to do it. Going to the store, waiting in line at midnight was not going to cut it anymore. And so I sacrificed being able to tangibly own these things for the ease and convenience of being able to download it right then.
This is the generation of convenience. We've never had things more convenient, whether it be food, whether it be, like he said, games, movies, everything is at our fingertips now. We are so spoiled. We are such a spoiled, lazy generation. You know, everything is convenience. You know, if I can't get my Amazon package within a day, 2 days, 3 days max, it's like, what are we doing?
And that was really cool for about 2 years.
So
now
spoiled.
Let's time travel a little bit to the announcement of this current generation. You know, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. Lots of rumors swirled around at the time that especially Microsoft was going to do a diskless system. Whoa, what the f? You're gonna give us a console that can't play my physical games? Even though, let's be honest, most of us were buying our games digital. That felt like it was a step too far. And at the time, Microsoft sort of backpedaled and they were like, okay. You're not ready for the all digital future, but
that's what they always do. They always backpedal a little, but just know it's coming. Whatever they backpedaling from, they done showed their hand. It's coming, you know? PlayStation done that a couple times.
Get there soon. And let's look at the positives of digital media. I just listed a bunch of them. You don't have to go to the store.
Ain't a backpedal, it's a postpone.
So you're not driving a vehicle. You're not spending the gas to get there. You're not standing in line, and you're not buying a piece of plastic that eventually, unless you're like me and you keep everything, is gonna have to go somewhere. It's gonna have to go in a landfill, and it's accrued cost by the developer. So when a developer produces Grand Theft Auto 4 and they want to press, 5 million copies of it, that costs a little bit of money. But if they just need to put it on a server and let everybody download it, that actually costs them far less money, which you would think would mean the game would cost less money. That's a conversation for a whole nother video. The other positive that I said I would touch on later is the fact that if the game shipped in not such a desirable condition, like maybe there were some bugs.
Games be shipping like Kanye West albums. I'm just going to go back and update it later.
Or things needed to be fixed and you're downloading the game, then it was much easier to release day one patches. If you're downloading the game, they can just load the day one patch into the download and you would never know the difference. But that seemed to sort of create a ship the game anyway sort of culture, or at least that's what a lot of people think, because a lot of games were being shipped in pretty bad states. I mean, we all remember stuff like No Man's Sky, even Cyberpunk had its problems. I mean, the list goes on and on. Fallout 76. This sort of thing helped create and fuel that culture. So you'd get in a position where...
And when No Man's Sky came out in that condition, see, I didn't really know about No Man's Sky until after the disaster of that game, until after they had fixed everything. But looking at old YouTube videos of just like the backlash of how broken that game was, you would think that every game development company would be on their A game and just it would be a nightmare for a game to come out in that state. But nope, instead it is now the future and the present of how all games are released.
Maybe there's only 5% of the developers who are actually thinking that way and utilizing that. But because there's 5%, there becomes an antitrust amongst consumers, and then consumers start to just assume that everybody is doing it, which in my opinion is not something that happens. So when we started to move from these older generations into these newer generations, it was pretty widely accepted. We really didn't have to keep all of this storage space for all of our beloved video games anymore. We could pile them all onto a hard drive. That is, until we realized one thing. Let's take a little trip over here to the NES games. Let's grab the first one on the shelf. This is Quattro Sports.
Quattro.
This is a really good example. If I want to play Quattro Sports, I can come in here, I can grab it off of my
if you ever
shelf,
played Quattro
and
Sports.
I can pop it in my NES behind me, and I can play it. But let's say I want to play the hit Xbox Live game based off of the movie Real Steel. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It wasn't actually a hit, but
they should have named, I always felt like this, they should have named Real Steel Rock'em Sock'em Robots. That movie would have sold so many more tickets. Why didn't they name it Rock'em Sock'em Robots instead of Real Steel?
Using it as an example, let's say I want to play that. I actually can't grab that off my shelf. Technically, that game was never released physically. It was only released on Xbox Live. People started asking the question, if it's installed on here, and that's the only way we can get it, do we technically own the game, or are we buying some kind of license?
We're buying a license
to play the game.
To play the game.
Now this is something that started.
Was it California, or is it just everywhere? I don't remember, but they've actually passed a law last year, I think it was, where now online storefronts have to say that they are selling you a license of the game. It can no longer just say purchase game or whatever. I don't know if that's only in California though. Let me know.
Happening on PC long before it started happening on consoles, because still to this day you can walk into a GameStop and buy a physical copy of most of the games that you would want to play. I'll bet you do have to install it on the machine, and it has to run through some sort of online check in order for you to even play it most of the time. That's beside the point. On PC, they stopped selling. Do you remember big box PC games? They stopped selling those things years ago. Most PCs don't even come with a disk drive anymore. That's sort of something of the past.
That's
Nonetheless,
crazy.
This is something that people started thinking about. And this was a question.
Could you imagine when computers stopped coming with floppy disk drives? People are probably going nuts. This doesn't have a floppy disk? What the heck?
That a lot of people started asking. What happens when you buy a game digitally, you download it, and then support for that game stops? Or let's say your hard drive goes out, or worse, your console goes out. So what does that mean for your $50, $60, or even $70 that you spent on the game? Now, this is the argument that I see made online most frequently. When you buy a game these days and you're buying it digital, you don't own the game. You own a copy of the license. And if that game were to disappear, or, the storefront goes down, you don't own that game anymore. But every single Nintendo game I've ever bought, every single Super Nintendo game, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Game Gear, GameCube, Nintendo 64.
Why do they have a problem with just selling us the game? Like the rights to the game. Like, why is that an issue? I don't understand. Like, I understand if the storefront goes down or whatnot, but I can't even wrap my mind around what greedy incentive it is to sell us the license. Like, why not just sell us the digital game, like the rights to the game? I can't even understand it. That does anybody know? Like, what am I missing?
Game that I've ever bought, I still own. I know that sounds a little fanatical, even when I say it out loud, but I own all those games. So what's the difference between then and now? That's where this line gets really, really blurry. And that's where this conversation has started to fracture in many different directions, which, again, conversation for another video. If you want to watch that video, you should check it out here. This is why I think game preservation is so important. And this is why I also think that retro gaming in general is important. It is also why I'm such a proponent for stuff like the Chromatic by Mod Retro.
Okay, so he was holding that Chromatic earlier, and I couldn't remember what it was called. So I'm glad he brought it up. So the Chromatic, for those of you all who don't know, is made by the creator of the Oculus, and it looks pretty dope. Retro Game Core recently just did a review of it. I'm not gonna lie, it looked dope. It does not look $200 dope. I'm sorry. Like, I am sorry.
Which is a brand new Game Boy Color that takes your original Game Boy cartridges, and they are currently re-releasing Game Boy cartridges with not only re-licensed.
Now, they did have me with that. If you go on the website, you can buy games. That's pretty cool.
But brand new games. And I think stuff like that is really important. Now, let's touch on something that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. With some current events that are happening in my family, this is a conversation that I've been having with myself and my wife quite a bit. On Christmas Eve, I bought Leland a PlayStation 5, and I bought Crosby an Xbox Series X. Their own consoles. Aside from the Nintendo Switch that they have, it's their first consoles. Their first, real, full, big consoles. And as you may know, if you follow my videos, I play a lot of Fortnite. Or I guess I should say I played a lot of Fortnite. We played a lot of family Fortnite. Been playing pretty consistently. I've been playing pretty consistently since it launched. And the boys have been playing very consistently for the last year. They've put a lot of time and we've put a lot of money into it. Now, some of you may ask, well, Fortnite is a free game, but they sell cosmetics, battle passes. So you can put real money into this and you can buy digital items in the game. And again, this is a very divisive thing. Some people really don't like it, and some people really, really like it. I fall on the side of I enjoy it quite a bit. I have bought quite a few skins in my Fortnite account.
I mean, if they're putting out a game for free and they're selling skins, like, there should be a way for people to be able to, for the developers to be able to monetize their game in some way, shape, or form. I mean, obviously, Fortnite has a bazillion different ways that they monetize, but just speaking in general, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Just like Poke MMO, that game is free, right? And I definitely buy cosmetics from time to time.
Across multiple different games. I'm now buying skins in Marvel Rivals. And so my kids periodically would purchase skins also, or I guess I should say Mom and I would purchase skins for them. Well, on Christmas Eve, when I was transferring their Fortnite account from the Switch to an Epic account, and then tying their new consoles to that Epic account so all of the progression can be shared across platforms, we had a little back-end snafu with Leland's account, leaving it completely blocked and in limbo. We can no longer access that account. Now, if you follow some of my videos, you've seen me do updates on the conversations I've had with Epic, who unfortunately still, at the time of this recording, they have not been helpful at all. As of right now, they're telling me basically the account is unrecoverable. And this is something that for the last 2 weeks I've had to chew on a little bit. It probably bothers me more because it's my child. If it were my own account,
Oh,
take some
heck no.
accountability for the fact
What?
that, like, well, you know, I bought into digital stuff and digital's not forever. I do
Nah,
take accountability for that stuff, but it's a little bit different. It's my child. As a parent,
I feel
you
you.
get a little bit protective of that sort of stuff. You don't want to see your kids hurt, and you don't want to see anything taken from them. Not that anything nefarious has happened. Nobody stole his account, but it got
Yes,
linked.
they did steal his account. The developers, they stole his account.
To a empty shell account, and nobody has access to it. They tell me it's nameless, but they also say that because I didn't start it or because I don't have email access to it, they cannot give me access to it. That's sort of where we stand. Now, the thing that I've had to kind of chew on and think about quite a bit over the last couple weeks as I've posted these update videos, people have referenced in the comments, well, this is what you get for buying into digital crap. Nothing is forever, right? Well, technically, not nothing.
If you spend some money on something, you should be able to access that whenever you want to. Flat out. I don't care if it's digital. I don't care if it's physical. I don't care if it's digital and we walking around in the metaverse. If I get some metaverse tennis shoes and I'm walking around, I better be able to access them whenever I want.
Because there are a lot of things that, while they aren't forever, last a pretty long time. And that's where this argument between physical and digital media comes up. But while I was having the conversation with my wife, I actually was playing devil's advocate a little bit, and I feel like I made a pretty valid point. Let's look at it like an experience. Let's not look at this like ownership of something, but more like an experience. Let's say like a theme park, right? If you go to Disneyland or Magic Mountain, you go to a theme park and you pay X amount of dollars to enter that theme park and do whatever it is you want for the day. A place like Disneyland can be fairly expensive, 100, 200 bucks maybe a day. And then you get in there and you buy fast passes or whatever they're called, Lightning Lane, which allows you to sort of skip the lane. And there's an extra 30, 40 bucks, whatever that cost is. At the end of the day, when you leave that park, you've had that experience. It's like going to a baseball game also, or a sporting event. You pay money, you go there, you have that experience, and then you leave, and the thing that you now have ownership over is that experience. When you leave a theme park, it's not like they give you
Listen. I'm gonna let him finish his thought.
a big plaque or a token or something of gratitude that you can physically take with you. Maybe in today's world, we're not supposed to have tangible goods for everything. Maybe the experience is what we're paying for. When you go to a theme park, you spend...
No. Okay, so I see he's trying to, have a glass half full perspective on this whole thing. my kid and she's going crazy. Okay, I see he's trying to have a glass half full perspective, but no. If you buy something and they say that they're going to sell it to you, then they need to sell it to you, or they make it seem like they're selling it to you. A better example is if you go to Walmart and you buy a vacuum, and then, you've had the experience of vacuum in your house, and then you get a knock on your door, and it's the Walmart supervisor, and he's coming to get the vacuum back. He said, "Did you have a great experience?"
And all day there, you get the experience and you leave, but you paid money to go.
That's not he's trying to have he's trying to be optimistic about this, but no, I'm sorry.
That the way we should be looking at media in general.
It makes me think.
And if we do look at media that way, what do we think of physical media then? I feel like that is a really interesting argument to be had. I really appreciate all the physical media that I have. I operate.
It makes me think about, I was trying to look up the quote. It makes me think about the quote. It says, "You will have nothing and you will love it." That's kind of the perspective that he's giving me over here. Hold up, my bad. I turned out here we go.
Of this argument. I love my physical media, but I also love my ROG Ally, and I have quite a few games installed on here. I'm gonna be really bummed out if in 2 or 3 weeks we still don't have access to Leland's account. It's gonna be, it's gonna make me, I don't know how I will feel about it, to be honest with you. I'll probably be upset with Epic Games. I'm upset with Epic Games now.
I'm
In
upset.
fact, I'm
I'm
taking a
upset with
stand and
Epic
I am
Games.
not streaming or playing Fortnite until this is resolved. But if it's not resolved, what if I chose to look at this entire thing as a year-long experience? Leland played Fortnite for a year, a little over a year. I don't want to know how much money we put into that, including Battle Pass access. But
all right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap that segment up. I can't listen to it anymore, you know, because I know that he's trying to look at it from a glass half full perspective. And I know I have kids too, and he's trying to cope. You know, he's trying to cope with this situation, and I get it. He's not at fault. Salute to him for trying to look at it from that perspective. But I don't agree, and I can't listen to it no more because I'm getting mad at Epic Games on behalf of him and his kid.
Angel Knot.